If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys, and tonight I am talking about the long-awaited return of Dethklok, DETHALBUM IV. So, even though this review is coming out on Sunday the 27th, I believe? Yeah, the 27th. This came out on Tuesday, August 22nd. So, yeah, kind of an early bird review for this one in terms of recording, but yeah, Dethklok, first album in 10 years, and despite the title being 4, this is Dethklok's 5th album, because the last one that came out 10 years ago was the Doomstar Requiem rock opera type of album, which I thought was pretty fun, and that movie to go along with it was pretty fucking cool. So, for those who have been living under a rock, Dethklok comes from the Adult Swim TV show Metalocalypse, which started back in 2006 by metalheads and comedic masterminds Brendan Small and Tommy Blancha, and the music on the show was pretty killer, and so a real band came out of it, with Brendan Small doing guitars and vocals, Gene Hoglan on drums, and then for live purposes there's Brian Beller on bass, and then the guitarist, I completely forget the name of the live guitarist off the top of my head, so real quick, little nod to Mike Keneally. How do I forget that? But I digress. So that's the live version of the band with, like, the cartoon as the backdrop. So yeah, just a little note for those of you who have been living under a rock. And meanwhile, the virtual band, you got Nathan Explosion on vocals, Squisgar Squigelth and Toki Wartooth on guitars, William Murderface on bass, and then the drummer being Pickles the Drummer. After all, I've been known to do a pretty good Murderface, what the fuck is wrong with you pieces of shit? Or Pickles like, you get any SPA 50? I'm very Irish American. And I am Squisgar Squigelths, do not insult my guitar playings. And I am Stoky Wartooth, cause no one cares. And I'm Nathan Explosion. Not the best impressions, but I digress even further. So why don't we go ahead and talk about Dethaldum IV. So, yeah, first album in 10 years, so I was wondering what this was going to be like. After all, the last Galacticon album Brendan Small did felt more like a Dethklok album, but with some expanded ideas on top. After all, Galacticon's more of a prog metal band that Brendan Small has, but the last Galacticon was definitely more mellow death with some prog touches. This album definitely goes back for the most part to the old Dethklok sound, but with some added stuff onto it. Kicking off with Gardener of Vengeance, you get these cool chainsaws that just lead into like thrashy riffs, thrashy energy, very much like Token Dethklok. Even some like gross tremolo riffs and sweet drums. But then again, when you get Gene Hoglan on anything, you're going to get some awesome drumming no matter what it is. Now, the first few tracks to open, Gardener of Vengeance, Auroric Desecration, which was actually the lone single released for the album back around this time 2 months ago. Auroric Desecration definitely has more of those like machine gun riffs and thrashy moments, and an excellent groove on top of it. Though whenever you get to the chorus, like musically, there's a little bit of Immolation vibes, and this isn't the first time you're going to hear me say Immolation in this review. But then you get this like really cool build up to the lead with the drums and a chugging riff to kind of bring into the guitar solos. Now, if there is something I can definitely compliment as far as like being the highlight of the album, Brendan Small is such an underrated guitarist. After all, he came from the Berklee College of Music in Massachusetts, and he knows how to shred on guitar, and he knows how to write some really cool riffs. And top to bottom, there are some really cool riffs throughout the album. And Auroric or aortic desecration was definitely one of those examples. Poisoned by Food, which is a pretty funny title. You get this like big scream, sweet drums, and then heavy riffs with some nice bends. It's like just keep bending those riffs. And then you get this groove and riffs and tremolos that made me think Morbid Angel. Now the following few tracks, Mutilation on Saturday Night, Bloodbath, I Am the Beast, and Horse of Fire, this is where I thought the album kind of went down a little bit in terms of quality. Like, Mutilation on Saturday Night, given the title, it should have been a, quote, brutal song, but this is definitely where they start to get a little bit more on the melodic side. And this song, like, the way it opens with the riff and the thrashy beats, made me think of Meshuggah a little bit, but then you get some tasty melodies that kind of made me think of In Flames a little bit. And then even like a harmonized lead, which was pretty cool. Actually, there are a couple of harmonized leads on here, as well as Poisoned by Food. But Bloodbath was definitely the one song I was expecting to be this like ultra brutal track. The song is called Bloodbath, for God's sakes, but it was mostly like a standard melodeath track. Nothing really setting the world on fire. I'm not saying it's bad, it's an alright track, but I was hoping it would have been like a more brutal, heavy, vicious onslaught. But that turned out not to be the case. I Am the Beast is kind of mostly like a chug-a-thon of a song, and it's, for me, tad bit generic chugging, I would have to say. But the things that kept this song from going under for me was the chorus having some tasty melodies, and there's almost like, I don't know if I would call it a jazz part, but towards the end, you get this like really cool like playing with the guitars and the drums that leads into another really good guitar solo. And then Horse of Fire, this song has a big opening riff with a nice groove, and there's nice progressions in the background that almost feels symphonic, which helps to keep the song interesting, and then you get more rocking leads and a breakdown towards the end. But the final four tracks, like the final four and the first three, are the highlights. This is 11 tracks, it's a little over 42 minutes, but I would say the first three and then these final four were the big highlights for me on the album. Deadface starts off with an acoustic guitar intro, which I did not expect, and then it leads into like a doomy riff, but with like a somber tremolo melody faintly in the background. Kind of made me think of a band like In Mourning a little bit, but then there's even some like Gojira vibes I kind of get on here, and as well as the following track, Satellite Bleeding, I get a lot of Gojira in those two tracks. But Satellite Bleeding brings back the immolation riffs, where there's little hints of dissonance and atonal parts. And then SOS, you want to talk about dissonance and chugging, holy shit, that song has it all when it comes to chugs and dissonance, melody, progressions, solos. That was one of my favorites of the album. But then we get to the big closer, the longest track of the album at 4 minutes 44 seconds, Mermaider 3. So this is the third Mermaider we've gotten, and starts off like classic Mermaider, where it's the under the sea ambience where it feels very eerie, and then it gets into that classic Mermaider chugging riff and groove. But it's heavy, and there's dissonant melodies, and brings back the immolation vibes again. And then there's even a section where the riff dissonance and rhythm gets a little bit odd, like odd time, kind of again like Immolation and Morbid Angel a little bit. And I love the lead. Like, the lead on this song might have been maybe my favorite lead of the entire album. And then it ends in a similar vein to the original Mermaider, with the chugging riff and him going chug, 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 which nice like callback to the original Mermaider. Mermaider 2 was pretty good, but I would say Mermaider 3 is almost on par with the original Mermaider, and I would say one of my new favorite Dethklok songs to listen to is Mermaider 3. So if this is the last Mermaider they do, what a fitting end. So as far as stuff I didn't like I said, the middle four tracks, like I said, Mutilation on Saturday Night, Bloodbath, I Am the Beast, and Horse of Fire, didn't really stand out to me or set the world on fire, but they're okay songs. I'm not saying they're bad, but just compared to the first 3 and the final 4 songs just didn't quite stick out. And then I do have some issues with the production. There are times where sometimes the drums are a little bit overpowering the guitars. Then there are times where the guitars kind of overpowered the drums, so the mix was uneven on certain tracks. But besides those minor complaints, I couldn't ignore how good the first 3 and the final 4 songs were, so for that, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I thought this was a pretty damn good album, and I might pick it up, although I still need to get Dethklok albums in general, but the first few are kind of hard to find right now, and I don't know why, but still, 8 out of 10. But of course, that's just my opinion. What did you guys think of DETHALBUM IV by Dethklok? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.